Howdy YouTube family, it's Bolt SRNA coming to you again with another day's topic. I've got Natalya here again, my classmate, fellow SRNA, and today we're coming to you talking about how is CRNA students' relationships with registered nurses and LPNs and pretty much other nurses, RNs and everyone else that continued doing bedside nursing and stuff when you continued on to go into school. Sometimes the tensions can be a little tight between you, and then sometimes they can be really supportive and great. But there's definitely a dynamic and relationship change when you shift from being an RN and working bedside to going back and getting your doctorate and learning to be an anesthesia provider. So we're going to get into that today. When you first got your letter that you were accepted into CRNA school, that's usually the time, that's when the planet starts shifting and gravity goes upside down all of a sudden, and you're no longer considered like part of their crew with some people, and when you're on your ICU unit. So when you first got your letter that you got accepted into CRNA school, did you feel like anything changed between you and the other RNs on the unit?
You know, overall, I think it was mostly supportive. There were a few people, they would kind of approach you with a hateful attitude, but, you know, to your face, they'd be like, oh, well, congratulations, but then you'd hear people talk behind your back and be like, oh, she's too young, or she doesn't have enough experience, or, you know, whatever the reasoning was. And you could kind of feel the dynamic change also after that when you would approach them or ask them for something, or just to have a conversation. You could tell that there's some tension between the two of us, because it's almost like you're leaving them and you're leaving their team and you're going to somebody else's team now. And and maybe they wanted to also go to that same team, but they were not able to, or there was something that got in their way, or and I will say, not to interrupt you, but this person in particular that I'm talking about, they also wanted to get into CRNA school and they did not. So
that's a very hard dynamic.
and I absolutely understand that, but you can't. It wasn't really my fault that they didn't. So. To be approached in that manner was not very nice. Yeah. It's definitely not. It's not fair. There's a lot of stuff you're going to deal with as an SRNA that is not fair, but you're going to deal with it. And maybe there was unfair things in that RN's life that led them to where they could not get into CRNA school, or something came up. I did want to talk about the specifics of like events that you've had as even when you were in CRNA school and in your training, like what kind of things have happened to you with other nursing people as you've gone through your training? So you guys will, if you're in school, you encounter a ton of different people, a ton of different personalities. I'm lucky in the fact that I haven't had too many, instances where somebody was just blatantly rude to me or whatnot. But there are some people, I think, like especially in PACU, some nurses just kind of disregard you or just ignore you, especially when you're a student. If I'm not by myself that day and I'm with a CRNA, for example, when we roll our patient out, I go ahead and he'll come up, start giving a report, and this one particular instance that I'm thinking about, the nurse wasn't even listening to me, and it was obvious. It was very obvious. She was, I was talking, and she would go ahead and interject and just start talking about something else. I'm like, I'm talking here, I'm trying to, and I'm not a loud person, and I'm not gonna, scream at you or confront you about it, but it was. I kind of was shocked a little bit. I'm like, I'm trying to tell you about your patient, and you're totally ignoring me. Yeah. And
so subtle signs of disrespect.
Yeah.
You're gonna have that all the time as a student, and it's a lot of times when you do have a dynamic with another nurse where it's not pleasant, it's usually not outright in your face. They're usually not, because they know that that's not going to fly and that's going to complicate their workplace. So they're not going to say things directly to you that are hateful or rude or whatever. Sometimes you will have that happen still, but typically it's going to be a lot of small, subtle things, like they just interject and start talking to someone else in the middle of you trying to give them a report and stuff, and you really can't do much about it. And
it's like little subtle things sometimes. Even like in the OR, sometimes you get an overbearing circulator or something like that. And
circulators can be your best friend as an SRNA, and they can also be your worst enemy. Because if they have some kind of reason that they don't like you or don't like SRNAs or want to create problems for you or obstacles, they can. And they can get at the head of the bed while you're doing induction, and they can quiz you about what you're doing and how much you're giving. And I had one circulator one time ask me, how much propofol are you giving? And did you give enough? Or, I think, what drug are you using? And started like questioning my anesthetic. And this was as a junior, actually. And the CRNA was right at my, left side. And there was no reason for them to be questioning me. And if anyone should be questioning me, it would be the anesthesia provider present, not the circulator. So there's just some odd, situations that you'll have like that. And sometimes I had one circulator, and this was actually as a third year, I had a circulator who was a brand new graduate right out of nursing school and came into the OR, and she asked me for vent settings for a post-op patient. And I told her, hold on, let me ask the CRNA that I'm with, because I wasn't going to just give her vent settings for post-op settings on the floor without knowing for sure what the CRNA would like them to be on.
Well, ultimately, it falls back on the CRNA, so you would want to make sure that
and
they're
this is
happy with whatever.
Yeah, and this is what they'll be managed on the floor. So
Absolutely.
I could just make that call, but I'm not going to without at least asking the CRNA what they think. And she said, did you even learn how to do ventilator settings? Did you even go to CRNA school? And she just bluntly put that out there, aggressively at me. And she's also done similar things to other students. So you will have moments like that in your training where someone, usually nurses like that, will aggressively come at you and make comments and things and question you. And there's definitely a dynamic between some of them that's not positive.
Absolutely. And sometimes they do overstep their boundaries, and it's not even just you as a student. I was with a CRNA one day and had a similar situation where the circulator was basically taking over the whole anesthesia process, and my CRNA was just in shock, basically, because she was like, this is ridiculous, like you need to stay, on your side of the bed type of deal. And I just felt awkward because I felt like I was kind of in the middle of this whole situation. And like I said, I'm not a confrontational person, so I just kind of stepped back.
Right.
But, and as a student, you don't want to stand out too much. And, anyway.
It's not your battle to deal with. You're going to leave at the end of the day and go home. Eventually, you'll finish that rotation, and you may never see that circulator or PACU nurse or whoever again. So you really don't. That's not your battle. You're going to move on past that and keep on with your life somewhere else.
Right.
So yeah, I agree. We as students, you're informed, like, don't get involved in all of that, and it's a good idea.
Yeah, like it was so bad that the CRNA actually went to the anesthesiologist and said something to them about it, and so it was addressed later that day, because the situation really was kind of. She was overstepping her boundaries. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but like I said, it was almost to a point where she was taking over the whole anesthetic process.
Right.
And it's just not acceptable.
And I've seen moments where the CRNA, a good CRNA who's experienced, is going to be able to put other ancillary staff or assistive personnel in their places in a kind of diplomatic way. And I've watched them do it many, many times where they just say a sentence and the staff knows, like, oh, I'm overstepping my bounds, or I need to step back, or like, this is not appropriate kind of thing. So you will develop that, and as CRNAs, I'm sure we'll be more aggressive about doing those kind of things because it'll be our personal workplace and we're not students anymore. But as a student, we don't want to do that. It's not really our battle to fight, and we're not going to pick that battle.
I think you're just gonna end up dealing with a lot more issues.
Yes.
If you
got too much to deal with already.
You have too many things riding on the line for you at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are some of the more negative things that you'll deal with. Some pre-op nurses that might not be nice to you, or PACU nurses, or OR nurses, or maybe occasionally an ICU nurse that used to be your friend, or a coworker that no longer wants to talk to you, or maybe talks bad about you behind your back because you're doing something they wanted to do. But I don't want to paint the picture that there's all this negativity all the time.
Absolutely. I think a lot of it also kind of has to fall back on you as well. If you get a big head and have this huge ego and an attitude and approach it, other people with it, then yes, they're gonna, fight you back on it. And rightfully so. You don't want to offend people, and
right.
No
matter what
especially
you do.
especially when you're first starting out. Yeah, you got into CRNA school. It's a great accomplishment, but at the same time, you still, when you're just starting out, you don't really know anything about anesthesia. So don't let that go to your head. And
people will pick up on that if you have the wrong kind of attitude, or you're extremely egotistical, or you're condescending to the staff who might be there to try and help you get stuff done. If you're not treating them well or respecting them and their knowledge and what they're good at, then they're going to make things worse on you. Your life will be worse. So if you do treat them with respect, they are usually respectful to you. And I've had some circulators that, especially at this previous rotation I was just at, had circulators who were just like on the spot. At this point we run our own rooms and run our own cases, and they would be like, "Hey Jason, you want some more fluids? I'll go get it for you right now. I'm so sorry." And in fact, one of them called me sir all the time, and I thought that was very awkward. I don't want to be called sir, and I would, and
I think it was probably out of respect.
I can't be more than 5 years older than him, but he would call me sir all the time, and I would be like, "It's Jason, you just call me Jason." But he'd be like, "Oh no, I'm sorry, sir. I'll get you that normal saline or whatever." I'm like, "No, okay."
It does make you feel awkward.
It is awkward, but it is nice that. In my point being that there are situations and circumstances where circulators and other RNs and stuff are very supportive and very nice, and they respect your knowledge and they respect what you're doing, and they're going to assist you, and they're definitely, especially when I run my own rooms or I go through induction and intubations and stuff, without really any other anesthesia provider there assisting me. The circulators assist you. They'll hand you the ET tube. They'll apply cricoid pressure for you if you want it. They'll help position the patient for you the way you need it. They're going to be there helping you out. So, and same for PACU nurses. And when I give report now, a lot of times the PACU nurses are like, "Oh, I got you, no problem. I'll take care of the patient." Very nice and cooperative. And same for pre-op nurses who may come to you and say, "Hey, just a heads up, this patient said this is wrong, or they had this loose tooth," or they'll try and they'll get you labs done. If you need them done, they'll go get them drawn for you or whatever, or get an IV started for you. So there are a lot of times where nurses are your best asset and your best friend. So there's definitely two sides of the coin there, and as an SRNA, you'll see both of them.
Like I said, I'm going back to what I mentioned earlier. Your attitude will make or break you in this profession. Even the classes below us, whenever the juniors started their rotations, that's pretty much what I told them. And it's true, you guys. Honestly, how you treat people, it's going to reflect back on how they treat you, how they treat you back.
Yeah.
So, like you said, nurses can be your best friend or they can be your worst enemy. So, and a lot of the time it's going to fall back on you and how you present yourself, and, just be grateful and thankful in the position that you're placed in, because, it's a great honor to be in where we're at, but you have to also be appreciative of that.
Yes. Very good point, Natalya. Well, thank you so much for coming on today and talking to YouTube about our experiences with RNs and how the dynamics shift a little bit when you get into CRNA school. If they want to follow you and keep up with you, they can go to Instagram, correct? And Natalya Malenko on Instagram, and I'll put a link down below. And of course, I'm Bolt SRNA on Twitter and Instagram as well, so you can follow me over there. And hit the like button if you like this, and subscribe if you want me to continue to make videos like this. And if you have any comments, put that down below. And otherwise, that's Bolt out.